Hello, amazing people. It's time for another hot lap. Buckle up, get your helmet, let's go for a ride. Hope you all are having an amazing week so far. If not, I hope we can go ahead and turn that around today. We have some exciting things to look forward to this weekend. This week we're going to be diving into the worlds of Formula One, the World Endurance Championship, and NASCAR as we discuss some of the key events and news around the upcoming Grand Prix, as we have a big weekend ahead of us in the F1 race in China, as well as the World Endurance Championship returning for its second race in Italy. That will be around the circuit in Imola. And of course, we will look at the past week's race results from NASCAR. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight into it. Alright, we're going to start this week's episode off strong, as we always do with Formula One. It is important to do a lot of reflection, always, just in general, in my opinion. It's important to reflect. It's important to reflect on your life, your decisions, reflecting on things like money and jobs and your happiness. And it's just important to reflect because it's important to be aware. In our case, it's important to reflect on the world of motorsports. In order to do so effectively, we have to take into consideration the benefits and the setbacks as a collective unit in order to make a machine function and work correctly. Each individual team has faced troubles and triumphs throughout the season, but each team has faced a different amount in their respective type of issues. Let's start off with Red Bull Racing. A very, very strong start to the season, speaking mechanically and racing. Their car is absolutely insane. The car is very, very fast and suits Max Verstappen to the T. His driving style is very much responsive, as he likes to induce oversteer and then control the snappy back end of the car. He likes to be planted in the front so that he can really whip the car through the corners. That Red Bull is exactly what he needs and how he needed it built. The same cannot be said for his teammates. There's actually an interview with Alex Albon where he describes what it's like to be Max Verstappen's teammate. And as we can see from that, it is very, very rough, and it makes sense why he goes through so many teammates. It seemed like him and the likes of Daniel Ricciardo were very, very similar when it came to their driving styles, which is why they had so much competition. The likes of Alex Albon, Sergio Perez, Pierre Gasly just have very different driving styles from Max, and that really sets it apart when it comes to the car that is basically custom built for Verstappen and for his success specifically. I think as far as racing goes for Red Bull, the only problem that they have faced was the DNF from Max Verstappen in the Australian Grand Prix. That was definitely a big hit to the unreliability of that car. Will it continue to be unreliable? We don't know. We may see some other things fail. We may see some other teams start to have failures on their cars. It's all just a matter of time. I'd say probably about 2 or 3 more races in, and we'll see how the rest of this season is going to go. Obviously, hope is always still there. It is definitely still there for all of us. The season is fairly new. However, I think a lot of people have kind of accepted the fact that Red Bull are just the better team this year. And, unfortunately, there's not much that we can do about it besides hope and besides watch for a couple bad weekends to come up for the team. As bad as that sounds to say. So, Verstappen's DNF in the Australian Grand Prix was the only trouble that Red Bull have faced mechanically and from a racing standpoint. The obvious trouble that Red Bull have had this year is in the Christian Horner and Helmut Marko case. I keep bringing it up on off weeks where we're just talking Formula One, we're not talking about a specific race, because I don't feel that there has been any real resolution or any real closure to the case. And personally, I do think that some kind of harsh decision needs to be had and changes will need to be made. If not, I think it will drive a lot of employees away from the company and even maybe the drivers as well. We see Max Verstappen and Verstappen's dad very unhappy with the fact that Christian Horner stayed at the team. They could be moving, Max could be going to Mercedes. That spot still has yet to be filled, although there is speculation about Carlos Sainz leaving. So we will see. I do think that Red Bull need to bring some sort of closure and some sort of final standpoint. As far as we know now, nobody has been found guilty of anything that they have been accused of. We know the female employee was laid off. That is about as far as the public eye got the information. Seems like everybody's kind of moved on. Maybe we should do the same, but I am going to keep bringing it up until we get some real closure, something that really happens. Some sort of way to move on from this. That, I think, has been Red Bull's biggest trouble. Their biggest triumph, of course, being the car. Moving on to Ferrari, which are yet another team who are looking very, very strong this year, coming up second to Red Bull. The Red Bull car is very, very fast through the quick corners and down straights. I think Ferrari have a lot of traction and a lot of good aerodynamic properties to their car. I don't know if the power unit is that of the Red Bull and of the Honda. That is one weakness that I would say mechanically that Ferrari is suffering from. Leclerc and Sainz are very, very equally matched in the car. Sainz getting a little bit more out of it in the races that we have seen so far this year. I think Ferrari's main weakness comes from these strategies that they have run. Not in all races, however. The one-stop strategy for Leclerc was very, very bold in Japan, but it ended up working out for them. I think another problem that they face looking forward is the driver conflict. This year, with Sainz and Leclerc being so close together, one little collision or a couple, maybe Leclerc defends a little too hard or something like that, or Sainz does a late overtake, or he defends too hard himself. That could set some fire under the Ferrari and really set them back this year. That is something that they do not need if they want to focus on catching up to the Red Bulls and, importantly, staying in front of Mercedes and the McLarens. I think getting rid of Sainz for Hamilton may end up being a very poor decision as well for next year. Lewis is... I'm not going to say he is, but I'm going to say he likely is very past his prime now. He is on his way to retirement. We see Lewis is going to be 40 next year. The only other driver that's 40 is Fernando Alonso, and everybody's kind of waiting for him to retire as well. So we'll see how that goes. I don't see Lewis being a Ferrari driver for very long. Getting rid of Sainz while he's in such good shape, he looks like he's able to challenge and compete with Verstappen and definitely Perez in the Red Bulls, even in a car that I would say is lesser. Where Sainz goes for next season is for sure going to be interesting, whether it's to Mercedes, which I've seen heavy speculation on Instagram recently, or if it's Red Bull to replace Max, who would leave if Horner stayed, or to replace Checo as his contract is up soon. Anyways, so it's definitely interesting to look into Sainz's future. It definitely feels like Sainz is very focused on what's happening now and how he can get the best result out of this year before he starts looking for a team looking into the next season. Moving on from our front runners, Red Bull Racing and Ferrari, we have Mercedes and McLaren. I grouped them together. They're in the same boat. They're kind of the top of the midfield. They're fighting each other for a taste of the podium, one that they could just scoop up, for example, when Max DNFs or when the Ferraris are not so hot. Usually they're picking up the P5 to P9 around the Red Bull or Ferrari having an off day. McLaren is locked in with their driver lineup of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri for the foreseeable future. I think it is a very, very solid lineup. It is exactly what McLaren needed. Some young drivers that are still very confident in their driving skills, very good on the grid. I think it is a very good future, a very good possibility for McLaren to be fighting for the podium in the coming seasons. Mercedes, however, will be on the market for somebody to replace Lewis Hamilton as he leaves to Ferrari and become George Russell's teammate. It could be Sainz, it could be Verstappen, it could be somebody from a development academy, the F2, the F3, a reserve driver. There are so many possibilities. It is tough to tell. I hope that it's not Carlos Sainz, just because I want to see a little bit more fluidity in the driver's market. Maybe somebody like Sergio Perez ends up at Mercedes and Sainz goes to Red Bull again. Or maybe even Verstappen leaves Red Bull, Sainz takes his spot, and we've got this little love triangle going on. I don't want to see a direct driver swap. I want to see something a little bit more interesting than that happen. Maybe we will get it. I really hope we get it. But if not, if it's just a driver swap, then cool. Let's see how those guys do in the opposing cars. The rest of the field is very far behind from these four constructors, with Aston Martin being the next runner-up because of Fernando Alonso putting in an absolute shift every race. Alonso, for the car that he has been on fire this year. He is sneaking in to that P3 to P9 range that I was talking about the Mercedes and McLaren occupying. I think it's very impressive what Fernando Alonso is doing. I'm happy to see that he just renewed his contract for next year. It's good futures. We'll see if Aston Martin stays Aston Martin or if they change up. Who knows how it'll go, but it has been looking good from Fernando Alonso. Lance Stroll is there too. He's usually kind of P7 to P12, I'd say, sometimes finishing out of the points. But overall, I'd say Aston Martin is kind of the next team that is behind the Mercedes and McLaren. The likes of Haas, Williams, and the Racing Bulls make up the rest of the midfield, with Alpine and Stake way, way out of the back of the pack, making up the back runners. Stake has yet to have a clean pit stop this year. We thought we were going to get one with Valtteri Bottas and Zhou in Japan, but it ended up turning into a disaster later on in the race in the pits. We need to see these teams, being Stake and Alpine, come up with something special if they want to solidify a future, even in Formula 1. I already saw some possible news about Alpine being sold off before the season even reaches the halfway mark. That speculation is already going around. Something about a clause of them still having to use a Renault engine, but not running the Alpine or Renault name, the team being up for sale for another possible manufacturer on the grid. Developments need to come for these teams. There's no reason that the back markers should be going 2 laps down every race. There's no reason for them not to be catching up to the rest of the field. The whole budget cap thing is built for that gap to be closed. The gap in R&D, of course. They will need to show some signs of improvement and signs of hope in China this weekend. If not, then they will be counted out, and they will be losing a lot of following, a lot of money, and a lot of motivation. Those drivers will just continue to decline, continue to go further and further back down the grid. So a lot rests on this upcoming race in China this weekend. Of course, I will give my thoughts, my opinions, and a overview of the race in next week's episode on Tuesday, when I see you guys then. Moving on to the World Endurance Championship, but before we go, I'm going to put myself on blast real quick. I know you can already see it in the background. Yes, I was too lazy to do my laundry before I started recording. Oh no. Anyways, moving into the world of WEC. We have The Italian endurance race coming up this weekend in Imola. It should be an exciting one as teams are getting their bearings for round 2 of the series this year, hoping for some more competition up the field, somebody to put pressure on the Porsches that are absolutely demolishing. There is hope, however. Ferrari and Toyota have received the biggest BOP breaks for the upcoming round, with the Toyota GR010 losing almost 30 kilograms and gaining 6 kilowatts of power as issued by the FIA WEC committee. The Ferrari took some even more major upgrades, losing almost 35 kilograms and gaining another 7 kilowatts of power. Will we see these two fighting further up the field? We really hope so. I would like to see a 3 or 4-way battle, some different manufacturers, where it really comes down to the teams and the drivers perfecting their pit stops and making the most of every single lap. All 9 models competing in the hypercar class of the World Endurance Championship will be lighter and running more power in Sunday's Imola 6 hours than in the Qatar 1812 kilometers that took place on the 2nd of March, with the exception of a re-homologated car. That is the Peugeot 9x8 LMH. This being said, that re-homologation has been beneficial. They have gotten their own boosts out of it. I think that the Peugeot will continue to be competitive as it was in Qatar. We know that it DNF'd on the second to last lap in that race. It was unfortunate. They would have been on the podium and split up those Porsches. The Porsche 963 LMDH that blocked out the podium positions in Qatar has a minimum weight reduced by 15 kilograms and a power increase of 3 kilowatts. Not as big. Actually, I think it's one of the smaller bumps. I know Cadillac received the smallest bump. But it will keep it competitive. It will keep it fast. We will likely see it fighting out at the front this weekend. The third biggest weight reduction is for the Alpine. So, they're not doing good in Formula 1, but at least they're getting good bumps in the World Endurance Championship. We'll see if they can step it up there. Maybe that's their series, because Formula 1 evidently has not been. That weight reduction coming to 28 kilograms, closely followed by the Isotta Francini Tipo 6 Competition LMH and the BMW M Hybrid LMDH on 27 kilograms and 25 kilograms, respectively. Cadillac received the smallest reduction in weight, only a 2 kilogram drop, bringing it down to 1,030 kg class minimum, but its V-Series LMDH has been given the biggest increase in power at 18 kilowatts, which is equivalent to about 24 brake horsepower. This should lead to closer racing and battling on the field in Italy, and is something that I am really looking forward to watching this weekend. You will not want to miss that recap. Be sure to come back on Tuesday and check it out. Moving into NASCAR, we had the Texas Motor Speedway Grand Prix. An early lead for the number 5 car of Larson as he pulls ahead of the pack with Ty Gibbs closely behind him. On lap 11, we see Brad Keselowski having major problems with the handling of his car as Busch goes by the outside. This remained a problem for Keselowski. He did not finish inside the top 10 in any of the heats. I am pretty sure it was just a very struggle-filled weekend for Brad, unfortunately. Gibbs stays out of the pits as we see a small gas fire in the pit box before him, which forces him to stay out even longer than he had stayed out before than he would have liked to. It was quite the disaster for Gibbs as he ended up being in a lot of traffic after being forced to stay out and having to come in out of that traffic being slowed down. It sent him a little bit far back. He did end up recovering a little bit, but it was nothing substantial, unfortunately, for Gibbs. Jimmy Johnson brings out the first caution of the race, leaving those who gambled and stayed out of the pits as the big winners. Maybe it was God giving a sign to Gibbs that there was a fire in the box so he could have stayed out too. He did not catch the hint. Bell and Larson lead the group out of the Stage 1 restart from the incident, with Kyle Larson eventually taking his victory in Stage 1, making this his 11th mile-and-a-half track stage win. Christopher Bell then has a very similar incident to Jimmy Johnson, sliding up out of the corner after his car got a little loose over the bumps. Under the caution, Larson reports feeling a flat tire. Eventually, as he's coming around past the pit box, he is forced to box because that rear right tire that he was complaining about feeling flat came off of the car. Hamlin and Truex Jr. are ahead at the restart, with Larson being released 2 laps down at this point. Berry spinning and sliding up the wall backwards and into the barrier. This brought out another caution as he then spins again later, and this impact ends up bringing him out of the race, bringing out another caution. Chastain and McDowell lead from the restart, but the caution comes out quickly again after the restart as McDowell shoots up turn 2 and hits the wall fairly hard. Chastain wins stage 2. Bubba Wallace, Briscoe, and Burton go 3 wide at the front of the pack when Wallace gets out of the groove and spins, bringing out the yellow flag once again for another caution in the race. Tyler Reddick attacks Burton and makes a very, very clean pass, a little swapperoo for the lead of the race. Nemechek goes up the racetrack and into the wall, but the field stays green. It went yellow a second after that, though, for the 10th time of the day, as Blaney himself gets loose and goes up the wall. Tyler Reddick gets a long pit stop that lets Denny Hamlin and others go by. That was kind of a pit stop for the lead at that point in the race. Hamlin and Reddick having a good battle for a while. Nemechek goes around on that turn 2 bump again that we have seen become so common amongst the drivers. There was a little bump. If your wheel was turned at all, your car would go up, go straight, it would land with the wheel sideways, and your rear end would kick. You had to go over that bump very, very straight and very, very smoothly. Chase Elliott takes the lead out of the restart, putting his aggressive driving to good work to use to get his way through the field and take control of this race. We see very good racing from Chase Elliott. He was very aggressive all race on the restarts, just really, really pushing himself through the field, doing what he could to fight his way through. Stenhouse spins, and another caution comes out on lap 254. Larson spins on the restart as the battle heats up for Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin for the lead of the race. Elliott leads when the caution was flown, and he and Hamlin continue to battle until Hamlin himself spins on turn 4 and heads up into the wall with a hefty impact following. Chase Elliott and Chastain take the restart together in overtime with 2 laps to go. Elliott leads as Byron does a little pit maneuver on Chastain. He hits the wall after the white flag has been taken by Chase Elliott, and the race is considered over. Your top 10 are Elliott, Keselowski, Byron, Reddick, Suarez, Briscoe, Wallace, Dillon, Buescher, and Hocevar. We see some new names coming up this weekend in the top 10. With that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. It absolutely means the world to me that you just come every week, spend 20 to 30 minutes with me. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate each and every one of you. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see. If there's other racing series that you're like, damn, I really like these 3, but we got to get another segment in there. Let me know what you guys want to see. Let me know what you guys don't want to see, what needs to change, anything like that. Hit me up. YouTube comments, Spotify, leave a rating. Please, it would really, really help. It really boosts me in the algorithm, gets my name out there, gets my face out there. And we will go from there. Who knows where this podcast can go? The world is absolutely our oyster. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. Feel free to follow me on my socials linked below. My Instagram is Darius.Slezinski, Darius.Sledzinsk. Come back next week as we go over race results and key moments in the motorsports world. Some exciting races coming up. A good weekend ahead of us. I'll see you guys next Tuesday when we'll go over it. Until next time, don't forget to brake late and accelerate early.